If you're in the market for a new compact luxury SUV, there are no shortages of choices out there. But what if you want something that's a little bit different, something that stands out from a vehicle that your neighbor may drive? Well, that's exactly what the Alfa Romeo Stelvio has been for a lot of enthusiasts looking for this particular type of vehicle. It's been on the market for a few years, and since it's been a while since I had a chance to drive this car, as you can see this week, Alfa has loaned me this 2023 Stelvio Estrema. The Estrema is the new trim level this year that takes a lot of the goodies that we love about the Quadrifoglio, the high-performance model, and brings it down to a much more affordable price tag. So if you guys are in the market for a new compact, premium luxury SUV, and you want something that continues to be a little bit different, how does the 2023 Stelvio Estrema stack up? Stay tuned to find out. Now, before we start talking about the exterior changes to the Stelvio for 2023, I want to remind you guys what's underneath the hood. Now, Alfa continues to offer a choice of two different powertrains. Sadly, the Estrema does not get that lovely Ferrari-derived 2.9-liter twin-turbo V6. Now, in place of that lovely V6 that was built from a Ferrari V8, instead we get the company's signature 2-liter turbocharged gasoline direct injection 4-cylinder that technically actually has a single overhead cam design. I was actually surprised to see that. Alfa bills this 4-cylinder turbo as the most powerful engine in its segment for a base motor. It makes 280 horsepower and 306 pound-feet of torque. I really wish that Alfa would have given this Estrema a little bit more power, but sadly it has the same power as all the other baser engine Stelvio models. It all goes out through an 8-speed automatic transmission, and Stelvios come standard with your rear-wheel drive. The Estrema, however, comes standard with the company's Q4 all-wheel drive system with a limited slip rear differential that was kind of taken from the Stelvio QV. Fuel economy is rated at 22 in the city and 20 on the highway. Premium gas is going to be required. This vehicle should get to 60 in around 5.5 seconds, according to Alfa. We've got our testing equipment. We'll see what we actually can get. It's got a top speed of around 144 miles an hour. And as this vehicle sits, it's a little bit lighter than some competitors. It weighs in at just over 4,000 pounds. But let's go ahead and close up the hood and talk about the exterior styling. Now, sadly, Alfa actually hasn't really made any changes to the exterior design. It doesn't really need it, this car. Even though it's been on the market for like 4 years now, it still stands out. It looks very modern. It has a very unique design to it, especially the Estrema model painted in Misano blue. This is a $600 upcharge for the color, and you can see it really helps this vehicle stand out in a very aggressive way. You can see the headlights. You can tell this is an older design because this car actually comes standard with bi-xenon headlights. Every other manufacturer is going to a full LED headlight. Alfa does an LED daytime running light and LED turn signal, but it's a bi-xenon headlight. No fog lights, but you can see down there is the radar sensor for the forward collision alert. The Estrema model adds the kind of carbon fiber accenting around the signature V-shaped Alfa grille, and you can see the front splitter is a little bit more aggressive, not quite as aggressive as what you're going to get on the Quadrifoglio, and you also don't get the functional heat extractor vents that you get on the Quadrifoglio. But moving around the side profile, for those of you who don't really know Alfas, this vehicle really almost does look like a Quadrifoglio, aside from the fact that it's missing the 4-leaf clover badge that you find on the fenders. Now you can see the wheels. These are exclusive to the Estrema. They kind of remind you again of the wheels on the Quadrifoglio. They're a 21-inch wheel, which is about an inch larger than most of the other models. They're riding on a 255/40 series tires. You can see the brake rotors. The calipers are black painted. They're a multi-piston caliper, so that's something that you get when you go with the Estrema model. And then you can see here, there's a badge over here painted in black, a black accented badge, and then you also get the carbon fiber on the mirror caps, along with integrated turn signals, along with the black window trim, which again gives this vehicle a slightly more aggressive look. Now, let's move away from the car. You can see the Stelvio is actually a surprisingly good size SUV. It has a 111-inch long wheelbase, and its overall length is just shy of 185 inches long. So this is smack right in the compact SUV segment. You can see really from this angle with the sun hitting it, beautiful looking SUV. I love the proportions of the car. You can see the panoramic glass roof is going to be included on this trim. It's got these black accented low profile roof rails, which look nice. And then at the rear of the vehicle, you can see the taillights kind of mimic the design of the headlights with that full LED design. You can see LED turn signals, LED daytime running lights. You have a Stelvio Q4 badge, which Q4 again stands for all-wheel drive. This is not the Quadrifoglio model. And then you can see here the sport exhaust system that you find from the Veloce or the TI is found here. It's got dual exhausts, which technically aren't connected to the actual mufflers themselves. You have a slightly more aggressive rear splitter, and it again screams Quadrifoglio when you look back here, except the Quadrifolios have the quad stacked outlet exhaust, so that's something to keep in mind. But opening up the trunk area, you can see this is where the Stelvio gives up a lot compared to the competition. You have just under 19 cubic feet of space with the seats left up. You can see no third row is obviously available. It's a very usable trunk, but just not as big. You get around 25 to 30 cubic feet in most competitors. Underneath here, you can see there is a little bit of storage, which is nice. And it looks like you don't get a fix-a-flat, or you don't get a spare tire. You don't have to deal with a fix-a-flat kit. And if you fold down those second row seats, it expands the cargo to a little over 56 cubic feet, which is usable, but a little bit less versus what you're gonna get from some of the main competitors. So let's move on to the interior of this 2023 Stelvio Estrema. The first thing I do want to show you guys here is the Alfa key fob. You can see it is a different key versus other Stellantis-based vehicles. You can see it has lock, unlock, it has a remote start function, panic. You can also open up the trunk lid. I don't believe Alfa offers an option to do phone as a key, although I don't have access to the Alfa Connect phone app, but with the smart key access system, you can see the door handles are pretty conventional. The Estrema only comes with this black leather interior, which also has the red contrasting stitching, the real stitching along the dashboard as well. And you can see here along the door panel, you have real leather stitching with this beautiful carbon fiber trim, aluminum door handle. My tester also has a 14-speaker Harman Kardon stereo along with the aluminum pedals. So again, makes a really great first impression, especially when you look at these sport bucket seats. These are, I believe, a 14-way power adjustment. They also have a 3-person memory for the driver's side. It's got a heated seat. However, Alfa does not offer cooled seats. That's something you can find on some competitors. And I also really like the Alfa steering wheel that looks like it was lifted directly from the Quadrifoglio with its flat bottom design and the metal paddle shifters that are mounted to the column. But let's go ahead and step inside. The Stelvio actually has a surprisingly high 8 inches of ground clearance, even on this model here. So when I get in, it's got an easy step-in height. As I shut the door has a nice solid sounding thunk. Remember, this is built off of the very, very nice Giorgio platform that also underpins the new Jeep Grand Cherokee. But when you want to start it up, Alfa puts the start stop button over here on the steering wheel. It's not red like it is in the Quadrifoglio, but when you start it up, you can see the traditional gauges do a nice full sweep. You have a 7-inch helper screen in the center between the analog tach and speedometer. And then Alfa Connect is an 8.8-inch touchscreen, which you can also use as from this little control knob as well. You can see there's my phone paired up with CarPlay. It is a wired connection CarPlay connected via this USB-A port. No wireless CarPlay or over-the-air updates is available, and you can see the Estrema also includes beautiful leather stitching with red contrasting stitching on the dash. Surprisingly, everything is put together pretty well. There's some nice carbon fiber, real carbon fiber that replaces the wood. This screen could be larger if Alfa would just take up the rest of this unused black real estate here. Again, it's starting to look a little bit small. It was fine when it came out in 2018, but now it's not so great anymore. This area here has a soft touch injection molded plastic. The steering wheel is a manual tilt and telescoping adjustment, which you can see has a good amount of adjustability and range. The horn sounds good, actually. It sounds meaty and it says, "Get out of my way." And then you can see here, I love these paddles, how they're metal and they're connected to the column. These are pretty much the same ones that you find in the Quadrifoglio. I like the flat bottom wheel. This is probably one of my favorite looking steering wheel designs. You can see there are buttons here for the cruise control, for the audio controls and whatnot. But overall, you can see the dash hasn't really changed. This is the Alfa Connect head unit. Where's my phone with the CarPlay? It is perfectly acceptable, but you can see the screen resolution is just starting to look a little bit grainy, and it's just not very bright. Also, I found the software to be incredibly laggy. There are certain times where I'd be touching, and you can see I'm trying to touch the settings, and it takes forever for it to actually acknowledge my touch response, and it's just really slow and it's not wonderful. So Alfa really needs to work on this. I mean, they may as well just take the Uconnect 5 system that you find in many other Stellantis vehicles. It would be a better fit, but Alfa, again, wanted their own infotainment system, which is fine. I applaud them for that. But if you're going to do your own, you need to do it right. This is just feeling really, really dated, and it feels out of place. Put the vehicle in reverse. You can see another miss here. It's got a small backup camera display. When you have a bigger 8.8-inch screen, you're only using like half of that. You can see it has trajectory, it has parking sensors, but no 360 camera. And the image quality and resolution is also extremely grainy, so that's something to, again, take notice of. You can see down here you've got dual zone climate control, you've got a heated steering wheel, and you've got 3-level heated seats, but like I said, no cooled seats. The knobs and whatnot, they feel pretty tactile. They also feel really nice. You have more stitching along here, cup holders over here with more carbon fiber trim, and then this controls the 8-speed auto. It's got a trigger that you push here, push it up forward to go to reverse, push the trigger and kick it back to go to drive, push that button to go to park. You have an electronic parking brake, and this is your DNA drive mode selector. So D stands for dynamic. That's the sport drive mode. You can also adjust the damper because this car does have adaptive dampers, so you can also put it into a soft damper when you have it in dynamic, which is nice. N is natural or normal. I think Alfa calls it normal or natural. That's basically your everyday setting. And then A stands for advanced efficiency. That's your eco setting. So again, 3 different drive modes. The Quadrifoglio also includes a 4th race mode, which this obviously doesn't have. You also have a controller here with 2 shortcut buttons for home and settings. You have a volume, a knob here, along with a tuning knob. So again, there's some nice redundant controls if you don't want to use the touchscreen. And then over here you can see there's a wireless phone charging pad, but as you notice, my iPhone 12 Pro Max doesn't really fit here. It's kind of actually really snug, so that's something to keep in mind. If you look in there, you can see the storage is a little bit on the smaller side. You have a USB-C and a USB-A and aux port in there. So again, that's something to keep in mind. In terms of the seats, these seats also, they hold you in place pretty nicely. They also have an adjustable bolster here where you can have this hug you or release you. The head restraint, you can see, has the cool Alfa logo embossed in the actual head restraint. And then over here, you can see the glove box is a bin style. It's damped and it's lined with felt. It's a pretty decent size. And then above me here, this car does have a pretty gigantic panoramic glass roof, which you can see this also opens up. And if you want to open it up, you can see it just opens up over the 2 front seats, but you can actually open it up slightly larger. That's the biggest it's going to go. But at least it does open up and it lets in a lot of light and fresh air. But overall, the cabin has most of the tech features that you expect, but the software is definitely dated. You don't get an all-digital display, no heads-up display, no digital camera review mirror. In terms of the space, it also feels fine, but really this car kind of feels like a driver's car, and I love how Alfa has carried over some elements here from the QV. Looking at the back seat of the Stelvio, this is again where you're going to be making a compromise here compared to competitors, because the back seat has roughly 34 inches of legroom, which is on the small side even for this segment. Now you can see the door panels, they're the same materials from the front, soft leather, stitching, carbon fiber, a nice padded area over here. And then when you want to get in, you can see, for me, my height, I didn't have to duck my head, which is nice. Let me get in and shut the door. The door has a similar thunk to the front, and you can see here with 34 inches of legroom, I'm pretty comfortable back here. It's not the most that I've seen, but you can see the seat backs are sculpted, so you have a little bit more space for your knees here. You have 2 storage pockets. You surprisingly have 3 level heated seats back here, along with 2 USB-A charging ports. You have rear seat air vents, and then you also have an armrest here that folds down that gives you 2 cup holders. There is again a little glass area here that lets in more light. This doesn't open up. There's also LED map lighting back here, which is nice, but overall the back seat is on the tight side. This is pretty comparable to the Porsche Macan, which again, it itself is a little bit small. So if you want more backseat room, you need to take a look at some of the Alfa's main competitors. So in the world of compact luxury SUVs, there are so many vehicles to choose from. And if you want something that isn't what your neighbor drives, you're going to be wanting to drive an Alfa Romeo, specifically the Stelvio. And I have to say, it's been a few years since I drove the Stelvio. Had some time in the base TI and a Quadrifoglio, but this Estrema model looks like a Quadrifoglio on the outside, but sadly, it does not get the powertrain from the Quadrifoglio, which is one of the reasons why this model is so much cheaper. But we still have about 280 horsepower, 306 pound-feet of torque. I've actually never tested the 0 to 60 time in this vehicle, so let's go ahead and see what we can get when we do it in our testing. Now it's got an 8-speed auto and it's all-wheel drive. Ooh, it actually takes off pretty well for the base engine, not bad. 0 to 60 in 6.03 seconds, so 6 seconds. Alfa actually says 5.5 is their official number, but this is a stretch of road that I use on a lot of vehicles where the ground is almost completely flat, so 6 seconds is perfectly respectable. It's actually slower than some competitors like the Acura RDX. The Genesis GV70 is quicker with the 4-cylinder turbo. And I believe the Audi Q5 is slightly quicker. So that number is surprisingly not as quick as I would like. I've actually never had a chance to 0 to 60 test the Quadrifoglio model, but 6 seconds is plenty fast for most people. What I don't particularly love is the sound of this engine. It doesn't have very much character to it at all. So that's kind of disappointing that the Alfa didn't want to give this a slightly more aggressive exhaust. But let's try it one more time here. Again, none of the fire that you get from the Quadrifoglio. 6.3 seconds there. This is with it going slightly more uphill. So the time is perfectly acceptable, but for a vehicle like an Alfa Romeo, I expected this to be much faster. Now, 0 to 60 times obviously aren't everything. They're just there for my demonstration purposes to show you where a car fits. But the Alfa, where it really does shine, is in the chassis. This is riding on the Giorgio platform that was introduced on the Giulia a couple of years ago. The chassis dynamics of this car, the balance, are pretty much, it makes it feel like I'm driving just a taller version of the Giulia. The steering in the car is a little bit too light for my taste, but surprisingly, it's really quick and responsive. I just want it to be a little bit heavier. The suspension, this car gets the adaptive suspension and adaptive dampers, and it also has a limited slip rear diff, even though this is all-wheel drive. So it gives you some of the handling goodies that you get from the Quadrifoglio. I just wish that Alfa would have done something to the engine, make the exhaust louder, give it like an extra 20 more horsepower. That would have been, more enticing to go for the Estrema model. Alfa is still missing a middle ground between the base 2-liter turbo and the bonkers 2.9-liter twin-turbo V6 in the Quadrifoglio. This certainly bridges the gap for the handling. I like the feel of the Stelvio. It still is one of the best handling small crossovers in the business. The suspension stays nice and flat, neutral, no body lean. The car just feels lighter on its feet. This vehicle weighs like 4,000 pounds, but you wouldn't know it getting it through some corners. Put my foot down here. You can feel that rear drive biased all-wheel drive system trying to put the power to the outside rear wheel because of the limited slip diff. And it's fine. The 4-cylinder turbo has plenty of mid-range grunt, but it redlines at an astonishing low 5,500 RPM. So really disappointed that Alfa didn't do more with the engine here, but this is still a very competent, sporty family crossover, which is also, family is kind of stretching it because this vehicle feels kind of more like a lifted hot hatch. I would compare this car directly with the base Porsche Macan, and I have to say the powertrain in the Porsche with its dual clutch and the 2-liter turbo in that vehicle actually is a little bit better. It sounds better and it feels quicker than this car, so that's something that Alfa, again, needs to work on to bring their vehicle up to snuff. Spinning the tires out there actually a little bit, but responsiveness is good. And this thing is never really feeling like it's wanting for power. It's just missing in the visceral excitement that you find in the Quadrifoglio. Now, what I love about Alfas are the massive paddle shifters. This actually came straight out of the Quadrifoglio. If I pull them, they're mounted to the column instead of the wheel, so they stay in place. They're basically crafted from a piece of aluminum. And they also work really well. They respond very quickly when I pull the paddle. It rev matches on my downshift, although again, the low red line of this engine doesn't allow me to kind of play through so many of the gears. There's second gear, put my foot down. There is a slight burble from the exhaust when you floor it, and then you shift right at red line. It actually will automatically upshift for you if you forget to pull the paddle, so that's something to keep in mind. But overall, it's a sporty vehicle. I have no qualms about the handling or the overall feel of this car. In terms of the ride quality, let me actually switch the drive mode back to natural, which is the normal drive setting. A is technically like advanced efficiency, that's the eco setting, but this is where the car kind of goes into the if it's more comfort-oriented settings here. The ride quality is actually really good, even though we're on these big fat 21-inch wheels. On this type of pavement, it rides really well. It's relatively quiet in here, aside from the buzzy engine that you hear when you put your foot down. I don't really hear much in terms of road noise or wind noise. And the seats are also pretty comfortable, but they do have a thicker bolstering, and you can adjust the lumbar and the extensions here so it squeezes you a little bit more on the side, which is nice if you're planning to go, attack your favorite back row. That's going to be nice. In terms of visibility, the visibility out of the front is okay. You have thick A-pillars here. Visibility out of the back, however, is not great. This car does have, their blind spot monitoring, forward collision alert, lane keep assist, but my tester is missing a driver assistance package for $1,600, so it doesn't have adaptive cruise control, which is kind of annoying that it's missing that feature. And in my week's worth of testing, let's talk about the fuel economy. I've been averaging around 22 mpg in mostly city driving. On the highway, it did get around 26 mpg. That's required, or that's on premium gas. So it's not terrible, it's not wonderful, but again, this vehicle doesn't offer an electrified option. Alfa's not really known for efficiency. They're more for about performance. But really at that point, I'm just kind of like, you know, some of its competitors definitely have better efficiency, but and they also are quicker. So that's something to keep in mind. That was the lane keep assist yelling at me because I was crossing over the lane. But overall, I do like the Stelvio. I think it has a place in the segment, even though it's a really crowded segment. I mean, if you buy one of these, you're going to be a dime a dozen, but just know that it does come with some compromises in terms of everyday livability. But with the 2-liter turbo, it's not exactly a penalty box, but for me, the engine's visceral feel just doesn't quite live up to the Alfa name. So when Alfa Romeo first had a chance to enter the compact SUV segment with the all-new Stelvio, I was very excited for this vehicle nearly 4 years ago, and I have to say, over the last 4 years, has the Stelvio aged well? Well, if you're looking for a compact luxury SUV that continues to stand out in terms of the design and just being out on the road, Alfa only sells about 10,000 of these in the US every year. It's the company's best-selling model, but it's also kind of a rarity when you see one of these out on the road. Everybody tends to drive Q5s, they tend to drive Lexus NXs, Mercedes GLC, BMW X3s, but the Stelvio continues to be a rare vehicle, and there are several reasons for that. First of all, after spending a week with the latest Estrema model, I like how Alfa has taken some of the design cues from the Quadrifoglio and given it to us at a lower price point, because this vehicle is about $25,000 less expensive, which again is a lot of money. Now, sadly, the 2-liter turbo engine under the hood got no upgrades for the Estrema model. It still provides decent performance, 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. However, it just doesn't have the sound that I was looking for, especially with an Alfa Romeo badge vehicle. If you have a chance to drive the Quadrifoglio version of this car, it essentially feels like you're driving a Ferrari SUV, which is kind of the whole point of going with an Alfa Romeo. The interior, the technology in it is also extremely dated. The screen is starting to look a little bit small. The software is extremely slow. There's no wireless CarPlay or Android Auto. You have to use a wired connection. And the interface itself is just kind of slow, laggy to use, and cumbersome. It's not the best one that I've seen. The interior in terms of comfort and materials is perfectly acceptable considering this price point. The back seat is a little bit on the smaller side along with the trunk, but I'd argue that if you're comparing this car to like a Porsche Macan, which I'd say is the main competitor to the Stelvio, it's pretty much on par as the Porsche vehicle. Really, what comes down to this vehicle is the fact that Alfa just doesn't have a good reputation in the US. They're known for being vehicles that tend to break down a lot, so if you plan to buy one of these, just keep that in mind. I probably wouldn't want to keep these cars past the warranty period, but it is still an extremely rewarding vehicle to drive. It's still one of the best looking vehicles out there, and with this new Estrema model, the base price of this car here is around $59,000. It is the most expensive way to get into a Stelvio 2-liter, but it also takes a lot of the premium features and the sporty options from the QV. Just remember that the base Stelvio with rear-wheel drive starts at around $46,000. This one here with the Misano blue exterior paint is around $60,800 and some change when you add in the destination charge. In terms of pricing, it's perfectly reasonable, but vehicles like the new Lexus NX offer several different powertrain options, several electrified options, and there's also the extremely well-valued Genesis GV70, which is probably one of my favorite vehicles, so keep that in mind, especially if you don't require the sporty-ish option. But with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2023 Alfa Romeo Stelvio and this new Estrema trim. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.